What's up, guys? Welcome back to Cinematic Diaries. Hope you guys are doing fantastic today. It's freezing out here right now. Me and the bud, Desmond, we're here at the park. Today, I want to talk about B-roll. I want to tell you that you can spice up your B-roll in 2020. Come sit down, bud. Come here. Sit. Good boy. He's a good dog. So, what is it that comes to mind when you think about B-roll? For me, it's shallow depth of field, it's slow motion, so 120 frames a second or 60 frames a second, or even 30 frames a second, and then buttery smooth footage. No jitter, probably used with a gimbal, all of that. That's what I tend to think of when I think of B-roll, and you might as well. I'm gonna link a video down below that really explains and describes what B-roll is and how to use it and when to use it and what it should look like and what its function really is. If you don't have a good grip or definition of something like this, it can tend to just be not good and used not properly, if that makes sense. So how can we spice up those things in 2020? The first thing, and this is something that I've been doing recently because I got bored with those three things and I wanted to try something different, something fresh. The first thing, don't just shoot in 120 frames a second. Shoot in 24 frames a second when you're shooting your B-roll. I'm not saying for those three things, get rid of it, don't ever do it again. I'm saying maybe add these other things as well. So that first thing is shoot in 24 frames a second. Put that person, that viewer, right there where you are. Sometimes when you're watching something that's in slow-mo, and if all the footage is in slow-mo, you're at a waterfall and you're at this cool place, it just doesn't feel like you're actually there. And if you're a viewer, you want to feel like you're there. And sometimes throwing that 24 frames a second in there and making it look like normal real life, it helps put you there. It'll help put your viewer there. It'll put them in your shoes. So that would be my first tip. Shoot in 24 frames a second. I think we're away from the traffic now, but now we got a crick over here. That's not as loud though. So the second tip is gonna be to allow yourself to have that shaky footage. Using a gimbal is cool, it's fine, use a gimbal. Sometimes it's okay to have some shaky footage, to have that natural shake to certain shots. Like when you're walking, you expect there to be a bit of jitter and shake. And I'm gonna refer to a video that I made for this channel back in October. I went to DC with some family and I shot a cinematic video, and all of that except for one shot was in 24 frames a second. And I wanted to exude a feeling of I'm right there with you. The flags waving at the front and the end of the video were in slow motion, but everything else was like, it just felt real. It was real life. And so I shot 24 frames a second. I didn't use a gimbal. It was all shaky, natural, just footage, right? And you have to know that that's okay. It doesn't have to be the smoothest footage always. And I think that's where we get in our heads as creatives, is we think that there's a certain expectation or standard that we have to meet that is not unrealistic necessarily, but just, it doesn't have to be that way. And we end up not creating at all, or we just trash it because it wasn't buttery smooth. With that understanding, to allow yourself to have something that is imperfect, I think is a little bit more genuine and comes across more genuine. Sometimes I watch some of these slow motion B-roll cinematic videos of coffee shops or small businesses or whatever, and it just feels fake. It really feels fake. It doesn't feel genuine. It just feels like somebody's trying to copy somebody else. I wanna spice that up. I wanna change that. I wanna do something fresh and different, or at least add something fresh and different to what's already being created. Don't get me wrong, like I said, do those things, those three things: the slow motion, the buttery smooth footage, the shallow depth of field. And that's gonna be number 3. Don't use shallow depth of field. If your lens, this lens right here, the Sigma, it has the capability of going down to 1.4. Don't go down to 1.4. If you're shooting a really beautiful landscape, you probably don't want a very small closed aperture. You're gonna want that thing wide open so that it's able to see everything. Most of the videos that I shoot, I'm at 2.8 right now. And so there's a little bit of a blur behind me, and you're able to focus on me because that's where I want your attention. I don't want your attention back here. But with some B-roll, if I'm shooting a big shot of something, I want an open aperture because I want to be able to capture everything in that frame, right? Because if I don't, there's going to be stuff that's going to be out of focus everywhere. You got to think about that stuff as you're shooting your shots. If I'm shooting something really up close, like let's just take Desmond's Frisbee for example, I might want this at a smaller aperture so that I can really focus in on this subject, this object. Like that one shot where Des and I were walking by, I want you to get an idea of where we are as we're walking by, but still know that we're the subject. And so that takes bumping up that aperture, and that's okay. You should do that. It's all good. Stay right there. I had to like tie him to that tree. It's so pathetic because he'll just run and jump in the water. Even though he hates baths, I can never get him in the shower to give him a friggin' bath, but he'll come run and jump in a creek. I don't understand that. Stay right there. I'll be there in just 1 second, I promise. And then we'll play fetch again, okay? All right, deal. The third and final thing that I wanna share is when you do shoot in 120 frames a second, this is something that I enjoy doing, especially when there's a good bit of motion. Like if I'm running or walking really fast, or let's just say I throw the Frisbee and Des runs and grabs it, I like to keep that at 100%, the speed. I don't want to slow that down. Sometimes I like to keep that there. It really feels cinematic to me when I see that footage played back, and it looks really cool. So I would encourage you to add that as well. So kind of to recap here, you know, still use 120 frames a second with slow motion, still use a gimbal where necessary, try to stabilize that footage, still go for that shallow depth of field when you're focusing in on something close up that's a small subject, but then also don't slow down that 120 frames every so often. Shoot in 24 frames a second every so often. Shoot a wider aperture with a bigger field of view on some subjects. Let your footage be a little shaky from time to time. Spice up that storytelling. That B-roll is a break from the A-roll. It's a break from the person talking or the engagement or the scene, right? And it goes on to, maybe it covers up some of the A-roll, or it shares a location, or it's a break from the footage, right? That's kind of the purpose of B-roll to begin with. Oh boy, that went right into the tree. Hope we can get that. Yeah, he got it. Oh, Des, you okay? He got caught on the branch. Just an additional thought too. I came to this park. I live pretty close to a park, which is super convenient. You would never know it though if I never told you. And I shoot B-roll here all the time. You don't have to live in the most luxurious and spectacular of places. You don't have to live in the Dolomites or, you know, the Rockies or the Great Smoky Mountains or somewhere in Europe or Amsterdam or anything like that. You can make B-roll where you are. You can make really good B-roll where you are. And that's the point. Like, it's not about your location. It's about the story. It's about what you're showing and what you're telling. And that's what you want to convey to your audience, to your people, is the story. It is the context. It is the feeling. And it's the scenery too, you know, like living in the Dolomites or in the area of the Dolomites or in Switzerland or anything like that would be freaking awesome. Like, you've got endless possibilities for gorgeous scenery, right? But your everyday Joe, your normal filmmaker, creative, they don't live there. They live in the suburbs. They live in a small town. But you can still make really good B-roll despite where you are, despite where you live. Someone finally decided it was time to go. Feel better now?